Hey, it's CDA, and today I have a guide for you on Motemancer, specifically on how to build a mall in this game. Now, for those of you that don't know what a mall is, that's basically an easy way to grab whatever items you might need for a large-scale scaling up of your factory without having to handcraft everything or walk around the entire factory to grab those things. Now, this is going to assume that you've completed the beginning parts of the water, life, and earth trees. It's still pretty early in the game, but having automated power, like I showed in my previous guide, as well as some basic production, some basic automation going, will go a long way towards making this more efficient. First of all, you want to make sure you're progressing through your technology the entire time while you're building stuff. As you can see, I'm working on both the water and the life and the earth tree at the same time. And in order to do that, make sure that you start producing some of your earth elementals. Now, I am currently doing that on the bottom left type of area, starting from your portal. There's some modes of every kind here, and you want to make sure you're producing some of all of those. Now, keep in mind, like I've showed you in the previous guide, that you can very easily make some nice hexagonal type of production facilities over here. Make sure you use your automated power to do that. And you can make some very beautiful designs with some power and some reaching grippers. As you can see, I have two belts coming in from the bottom over here. I have two belts on the top over here. I have one outgoing belt, but I also have the power connecting to all of that, and these nice little mana blooms sitting in between to make sure that you have a perfect coverage. Now, speaking of mana blooms, if you want to make sure you have a 100% coverage between your mana blooms, basically, then these need to be 3 spaces apart. That completely covers the entire area where the other one starts to curve in. Another couple things to note at this point is that if you want to speed run this game, then you should probably try to produce a little bit of everything, but just a little bit honestly, and just handcraft a lot of the things like buildings and stuff. That is going to be a lot quicker in terms of progression, so if that is something you care about, that is how you do that. I'm just here to build a nice looking factory. Now, if you want to build a nice looking factory with perfect ratios and things like that, then first of all you need to pay attention to the production speeds, but if you want to make things look good, all you really need to do in a game like this is make sure you focus on repeating patterns. You can see that happening over here. The pattern is repeating as much as possible. Now, what pattern it is that you're going to be repeating kind of depends on what you're building, but in general also try to make sure that you're always building in the same direction. So you can see, for example, my research is progressing over here. It's kind of like by itself, but everything is on a east to west or west to east type of direction. You could build a diagonal part of your factory as well. There's nothing wrong with that. It will just look less clean. If you do everything east to west like I'm doing over here, you just get a more organized feel to your factory. Is that a problem if you don't do that? Definitely not, so just make sure you're having fun. In order to progress through the mid-game, you want to make sure you have all types of elementals in production in a pretty significant way. I like building 4 of these elemental biters. You probably don't need all 4 of them, but you know, if you have all of this production, you might as well use it. As you can see, I'm not using all of my production here anyway myself, but you're going to need those elementals not just for a lot of the research, but you're going to need it for pretty much everything else you're going to be building from now on. Which brings me to the next point, because actually making a mall in this game that is not a total ball of spaghetti is pretty much impossible. Let me take these slabs as an example. So the slabs themselves are pretty useful, but you need them to make streamways. However, if you also want to make streamway deltas, which you definitely want to do, you're going to need both of those things. And to make matters worse, for example, the underground streams that you also are going to need require streamways and underground slabs, but in order to make underground slabs, you need, you guessed it, shifting slabs. So long story short, you need all of these things and kind of need all of them to make the other stuff. That is going to be a nightmare if you want to connect everything up. Also, don't forget that you can press Alt to make sure that you can easily see what everything is producing and what is stored in boxes and stuff like that, and that you can press Q to copy and paste whatever buildings you want. Okay, so with everything kept in mind, we are going to take another look at setting up a real nice looking little mall, to the extent that you can do that in this game. And your initial starting factory probably looks a little bit like this. There's some random collectors all over the place, some grindstones, making some basic things like salt, prisms, and things like that. Now, we are going to completely redesign this and scale this up in order to make sure that we can actually fuel a mall with that. Now, I'm not going to have you sit through a 10-minute video of me painstakingly build this one by one, so here you can see the end result. As you can see, repeating patterns, and there's some structure in this base now. So we're just still making some modes of water, and we have a very neat looking layout here, making some salt. And this is just to produce salt. The belt is not going anywhere, but we're going to fix that in a moment. Similarly, I'm making some more salt over here, but this is dedicated to making exactly enough salt so I can feed that into another grindstone, making prisms. In order to do that, we're going to need ether, so this is why we have another 2 production lines of ether. One is just the ether production we're going to need to use the ether itself for our buildings, but the second line, again, is dedicated to producing the ether that is going to be needed for the prisms. Oh, and as a side note, a lot of people really like diving into these streamways as soon as they unlock them, and if you want to do that, then by all means go ahead. But keep in mind that you can fit up to 8 grindstones worth of production on a single, just normal slab type of belt, and that's probably all you're going to need for a very long time. So you don't need to use streamways, you can use the cheaper version of the belts and for a very long time. Just keep in mind that 8 grindstones are kind of like the magic number, or twice as many of those collectors if you have them. Next up, you can bring those 3 items that we're now producing in mass bulk to whatever location you want to start building your mall at. Now, I've done a little bit of a build over here, very close actually to the main portal. If you want to really scale this up, you should definitely look for a place that has more building space. If you go to the northwest or southeast, there's a very large open area there. That's a little bit further away, so in that regard it's a little bit more annoying, but you do have a lot more building space to use. Anyway, the basic idea here is to make all the basic buildings that you're going to need a lot of, especially slabs and pedestals are things that you want to have automated because you need those for pretty much everything else moving forward. You need the pedestals to make the grippers, for example, and you don't want to start handcrafting these all the time. Other than that, all the other buildings like the collectors and grindstones, you don't really need to automate, but hey, it's a mall, so we're automating everything that we can, at least everything that we're using on a regular basis. Now, what you can see happening over here is that I'm using the reach and gripper to take stuff from the middle belt, and the middle belt needs to be the prisms. The reason for that is that this is used in pretty much everything else in combination with one of the other 2, so this allows you to really pretty much automate all the base materials, as you can see. Now, in some cases, I am drawing stuff from a belt and putting it on a secondary belt in order to, for example, make these little simple chests. You need pedestals in order to do that, along with some salt. So you can see here this reach and gripper is pulling in the salt from the belt and then putting it over here in this secondary tinkerer's table. I have a little bit of a box in between, because as soon as this chest thing is filled up with chests, interesting how that works, it's like a portable hole over there, this is going to fill up and make sure we have some at demand pedestals in case we need them. Similarly, over here I'm making more pedestals, but these pedestals are actually going straight into the tinkerer's table in order to make the grippers. Now, I'm just going to pause here for a moment so you can really see what's happening on the screen. And again, remember to press Alt if you want to actually find whatever you're building in your mall. I do want to point out that from this point on, you're going to need to bring in elementals. And the elementals are going to be combined with different things, pretty much in all the combinations that you can think of. So by default, that is always going to lead to a little bit of spaghetti. Now, again, if you space things out more, then it's easier to keep things somewhat neat and tidy, but still you're going to have to either reproduce a similar production line like we have over here, just to kind of like clone that and then dedicate a specific area to a single element. That is probably the easiest way to do that. However, I'm going to show you what it looks like if you do try to keep everything a little bit more compact and together. So here's an example of an early, what I like to call elemental mall. So we have the different type of elemental buildings in here. So we have these, what are these called? Stone cutters. We have the stream weavers, as well as down here the greenhouse for the live water and earth special buildings. Now you want to be really picky what you actually automate, because honestly there's no point in automating everything, and if you do, you will have a massive amount of spaghetti on your hands. So for example, what I really like automating is anything that I'm going to be using in bulk, like for example mana roots, you're going to use those all over the place, and some items that you might want to use a lot of in the research. So for example, the leaves over here are used in pretty large numbers in a couple of research things. An example of what I don't recommend that you automate is the greenhouses themselves. I mean, you're going to need maybe like a handful of them, at least initially, and automating that doesn't make any sense. And in order to automate it, not only do you need a lot of resource, you also need the Tinker's table. So you would need to grab that from over here, for example. Don't let me stop you if you do want to automate this stuff, but I would recommend against it. Similarly, for the earth, for example, I have just automated the new type of building block that you get, so the granite in this case, as well as the reaching grippers, because we're going to need not only these for research, but we're going to need to use these all over the place to build our factory. And then for the water elemental stuff, I recommend pretty much that you just automate the streamway. I did automate the, what are these called again? These deltas. But the reason I am just showing you this is because I'm using some placeholder boxes here. So for example, for the streamways, we need shifting slabs along with the elemental water. Now the elemental water is going to be coming in on this belt over here, but we also need some slabs. Now I could hook up the slab production to the elemental streamway. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but it's super easy just to grab a whole bunch of this stuff from a box, put it in here, and voila, this is going to produce several hundred streamway. And if you just remember to refill this box every time you empty this box, then every time you get back, there will be the streamways waiting for you, and you don't need to automate that. Now you can, but the only benefit of doing that is just to skip this action a couple of times throughout your gameplay, and that is it. What you do want to do is scale up these boxes further once you get the larger chests available, so you can just dump in, for example, like 500 or more of these slabs in here, and then you will have 500 or more of these streamways waiting for you. It's a very easy way and a very anti-spaghetti way to make a mall in this particular game. From this point on, basically what you want to do is add whatever type of resource or building you need in mass in order to unlock your next technology. This game is just pretty much based around unlocking new technologies rather than scaling up your production to the max. As you can see, even though I am way further down my technology tree now already, I've pretty much just added the different prisms, so the life prism, the earth prism, and so on. You're going to need hundreds of these for your different technologies, so it's fairly obvious that you should be automating this. But other than that, as you can see, I just added in the prisms. I don't think I added in anything else. I did add in, for example, the sand over here, because again, you need quite a bit of that in order to A, make a lot of stuff, and B, unlock some technologies. But other than that, it's all about scaling up the inputs, because all of this will gobble up a lot of resources. As you can see, for example, the prisms over here are getting run out before they reach my water prisms over here. So you do want to scale up your production, but not necessarily scale up your mall. That is also the point at which I do recommend that you start using streamways, because getting stuff from A to B with those slow slabs is not only very inefficient, it also takes quite a long time to go across the map. So, with the use of streamways, which again, by now we have automated, it's super easy to set up a new location. Just make sure you bring plenty of mana roots as well to connect everything up to your power hub. And as you can see, I'm now producing 10k power. I'm only using about half of that, and all of that is going to go into production. I have different hubs set up. I have a little bit of a energy silo over here. I have a upgraded version of a earth mode hub over here. All in all, this is going to be very easy to set up, very easy to produce stuff, and scale up your base. And before I wrap things up, here is a final version of the mall that I've built before I left the live plane. So as you can see, it's pretty much the same starting mall that I just showed you, along with some of those specialized buildings. I did upgrade a couple of these boxes in order to make sure you can fit more stuff in there, just to make sure things keep producing, especially while you're on a different plane. This plane will still be working, so might as well make sure that is doing something. And there's a couple of more advanced buildings in here as well, but just almost pretty much like a single one of each, I believe, because again, you don't need to produce every single recipe at the same time. Some of these recipes are kind of nice, but they're also not really needed, assuming that you've even unlocked them, because you do need quite a lot of technology in order to do so. But you do want to make sure you're completely automating a couple of things, like, for example, the production of corallite and the various other combinations of different elementals, because those are being used in probably like at least half a dozen technologies, so you're going to need probably maybe 1,000 of those, and you don't want to be handcrafting that for sure. As a final note, I would highly recommend that you don't get too much lost in building the perfect starting mall, because at some point you're going to realize that you've completed most of the life technology tree and that you unlocked your keystones, and that a lot of the other stuff that you want to research, you actually need materials that you don't have on this plane. And the reason for that is that the game wants you to take one of your keystones, put them into a portal, and leave for a different plane. And once this portal opens up, you can go through it, and voila, you are in an entirely different realm that has new resources and will allow you to unlock a whole new section of the technology tree. Now, keep in mind though that before you leave, you bring on a lot of stuff in your inventory, because as you can see, there's no way back. Well, there is a way back, but you're going to need another keystone for that, because this keystone is going to just work in one direction. So you have a live keystone that opens up the connection from one side, but in order to get back, you're going to need an earth keystone. Anyway, I think this is a pretty structured way to set up your entire first factory. It includes a mall that is a little bit of spaghetti-fied, but not too much, and all in all, it's a pretty fun and effective way to build your base. However, there is a different way in which you can approach this as well, which is going to be the subject of my next video. Yes, I did the YouTuber thing where I'm trying to lure you into another video. If that sounds interesting to you though, make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss out on it. And if you like this video at all, make sure to like it, because that does help me out. Either way, if you're still here, you're awesome, and I do hope to catch you in the next one.